Tonight, we will have a special topic, one that drifts between dream and memory, where fantasy and nostalgia entwine like light and shadow. It is not just a legend born from ancient words, but from the hum of old consoles, the glow of screens in darkened rooms, and the hearts of those who wandered through Hyrule under digital starlight. This is the Legend of Zelda, a story not only of courage and destiny, but of quiet wonder. Of green fields that stretch beyond time, temples that hum with forgotten divinity, and a hero who wakes again and again to chase the same golden light. It is a myth retold through generations, both in temples and in pixels, and it still sings softly to those who once held a controller and believed they could save the world. Before we begin, tell me, what game do you find yourself playing before sleep finds you? Write your answer in the comments below. I'd love to read them later. And if you enjoy these calm journeys through myth and memory, please take a moment to subscribe. It helps keep this space alive, a place where dreams and legends still meet beneath the quiet stars. Long before the mountains of Hyrule rose from the cradle of the earth, before the seas found their shimmering edges or the stars learned their patterns, there was only the quiet hum of creation, a song without words, carried on the breath of a goddess. Hylia, radiant and serene, sang the world into being. Her voice was not heard but felt, in the pulse of rivers, in the stillness of twilight, in the tender glow of dawn. From her heart spilled the Triforce, three golden triangles that held the essence of all things: power, wisdom, and courage. And from this divine harmony, the land of Hyrule was born, not as a place of mortals, but as a dream sculpted by divinity. In those earliest days, the skies shimmered with light that never faded, and the wind whispered secrets to the trees. Hylia watched over this fragile creation with love deeper than eternity itself. She crafted guardians of stone and spirit, filled them with song, and placed them where the world met the heavens. Her song was the bond that held all life together, a melody that spoke of balance, of hope, and of the eternal promise that even in darkness, light would find its way home. But beyond the edges of that light, something stirred, a hunger ancient and shapeless. From the abyss beneath creation came Demise, the great shadow who envied the goddess's perfect world. He sought the Triforce, believing that its golden power could remake the universe in his image. The heavens trembled as his armies rose from the void, and Hyrule's peace fractured like glass beneath a thunderstorm. The goddess, sorrowful but unyielding, gathered her chosen ones, the first heroes of the skies, and raised the land itself into the heavens, away from ruin. Thus was born Skyloft, a sanctuary in the clouds, while below, the surface burned in endless war. Yet even as she led her children to safety, Hylia's song never faltered. Her voice flowed through the winds that brushed against Skyloft's floating isles, through the shimmering beams of sunlight that pierced the mist below. Every note was a prayer, not for victory, but for endurance. She knew the shadow could never truly be destroyed, only delayed until another heart rose to meet it. So she wove her essence into the Triforce itself, trusting that one day a mortal would hear the echo of her song and answer it. In the ages that followed, her name became a whisper. The temples that once sang her praises fell silent, overtaken by moss and time. Mortals forgot her face, yet still they dreamed of wings and light, of a goddess who guarded their fate from the unseen skies. The birds of Skyloft carried her memory in their flight, and the wind that caressed the world below still hummed with the faint melody of her promise. There are those who say that when the world grows quiet enough, when the night deepens and the stars stand still, one can hear it again, the soft hum of the goddess's lullaby woven through the silence of eternity. It is a song not of words, but of remembrance. A song that tells us we are part of something ancient and unbroken, something that lives in every story, every rebirth, every dawn that chases away the dark. For even in this world of legend and game, Hylia's melody lingers, not just in temples or prophecies, but in the hearts of those who once held the controller and felt, if only for a moment, that they were touching something sacred. When the flames of war dimmed and the world below sank into restless slumber, the goddess Hylia looked upon her children in the skies and felt the weight of time pressing upon her creation. She knew that divinity could guard but not endure forever, that even the light of gods fades when the world forgets its melody. So she began to weave a new plan, one not of power but of hope. If the gods could not remain, then perhaps humanity, fragile and flawed, could carry her song instead. And so she descended from the heavens, relinquishing her immortality, and took form as a mortal. It is said her fall was not a descent of pain, but of grace, light scattering like petals through the air as she crossed the veil between divine and human. The skies grew quiet, as if holding their breath. In her new form, she could no longer command the elements or shape the stars, yet her eyes still carried the calm radiance of eternity. She would live and die as one of her children, but her essence would remain hidden in the bloodline of those chosen to guard the Triforce. The ancient records speak of this as the first covenant, the moment when goddess and mortal became entwined forever. Through countless generations, her spirit would return, reborn in those who bore her grace. Some called them priestesses, some princesses, but their purpose remained unchanged, to protect the balance and sing again when the darkness rose. But even as Hylia walked the earth in mortal guise, the shadow of demise was never far. His essence, banished yet unbroken, seeped into the cracks of time like smoke through stone. The world below healed, forests grew where ashes once fell, and rivers whispered through valleys that had forgotten war. Yet in those peaceful murmurs, darkness waited. Hylia could feel it, like a distant tremor beneath her feet, the echo of a curse not yet spoken. She sought to prepare for the day when evil would rise again. Her temples became sanctuaries, her priests recorders of ancient wisdom. In secret halls, the harp of the goddess was tuned anew, its strings meant to call forth courage from those yet unborn. The song she once sang to the stars now belonged to the future, to the one who would come with courage unyielding, guided not by divinity, but by heart. Legends say she stood once more upon the cliffs of Skyloft, gazing down upon the sea of clouds. The sun dipped beneath the horizon, and for a moment the heavens and earth glowed as one, gold and crimson, divine and mortal intertwined. She closed her eyes and sang once more her final lullaby. It was not a song of sorrow, but of trust. A melody for the ages, carried by wind, remembered by hearts, waiting to be found again. And when her voice faded into silence, it did not vanish. It lingered in the rustle of leaves, in the sigh of the wind that passed through Hyrule's forests, and in the soft hum that resonated whenever courage stirred in a mortal soul. The world might forget her name, but the melody would remember. Centuries would pass, kingdoms would rise and crumble, and mortals would dream of heroes they had never met. Yet the song endured, soft and eternal. For every time a blade was lifted in defense of light, every time hope refused to die, Hylia's presence was there, not as a goddess to be worshipped, but as a whisper guiding the heart. And somewhere, beyond time's veil, she waited, not in a temple of stone or a shrine of gold, but in the echo of the song she once sang, awaiting the moment when destiny would awaken again. The ages turned like the slow revolutions of a celestial wheel. The song of the goddess faded into legend, and legend into myth, until even the scholars of Hyrule could not tell where truth ended and dream began. Yet the melody endured, not in temples or scrolls, but in the hearts of those who felt a quiet call toward destiny. When the winds changed, and the stars aligned, that ancient music stirred once more, faint as a heartbeat beneath the world. Somewhere, a child looked up at the sky, drawn to the clouds that shimmered like broken glass. Somewhere else, a faint melody drifted through the forest, familiar, though no one could say why. It was said that when the world was ready, the song would awaken the spirit of courage, the one who would rise when all others fell. For Hylia's gift was not merely the Triforce, nor the safety of the sky, but the enduring rhythm of rebirth, a promise that hope would return again and again. Those who dreamed of her often spoke of wings, not of birds, but of souls. They dreamed of floating islands, of ancient lights, of a goddess who smiled through centuries of silence. To some, these were just fragments of forgotten tales. To others, they were the pulse of something eternal. And when the harp of the goddess was strummed once more, by mortal hands, by trembling hearts, the world would remember. In that remembering, courage would find its voice again. For every note that had once been sung by divine lips now lived within mortal breath. The melody had found its home not in the heavens, but in the hearts of those who listened. It whispered that gods may fade, but their echoes never die. They simply find new singers, new hearts to hold their promise. And so the story of Hylia did not end. It merely transformed, as all myths must. Her light became the dawn that followed every night, her voice the murmur of rivers that wound through forgotten valleys. Each hero who rose carried a part of her, not in blood, but in the soft conviction that even the smallest light could banish endless shadow. Now, when players close their eyes and remember the world of Hyrule, its music, its temples, its skies, they feel it too. That unspoken peace, that quiet yearning. The knowledge that they were once part of something vast and beautiful, born from a goddess's song. And perhaps, as sleep begins to settle, you can almost hear it, the faint hum of Hylia's melody, echoing from a realm beyond time. Not as a call to battle, but as a lullaby to the soul. A reminder that even in this modern world made of pixels and memory, myth still breathes. For every time the legend begins anew, her song begins again. Long after Hylia's light had faded into legend, the world drifted in an age of quiet peace, fragile, like glass catching the dawn. The skies still shimmered with echoes of divinity, and beneath them, life returned to its gentle rhythm. Yet somewhere between dream and memory, the old melody began to stir again. It came softly, carried by the wind that brushed through the clouds, as if the goddess herself whispered to the sleeping earth below, "It is time." In Skyloft, a city adrift among the clouds, a young soul dreamed of the world beneath. He did not yet know his name would be remembered through ages, Link, the Silent One, the chosen of courage. His life began not with prophecy, but with the simplicity of morning light and laughter. He was like any other child, uncertain, curious, unaware of destiny's watchful eye. Yet when the breeze passed him by, it seemed to linger as though it knew. As though it remembered. They said the surface world below was forbidden, a place lost to legend, veiled by storms and myth. But sometimes, when the clouds parted, Link would gaze downward, his heart heavy with a strange longing. It was not fear that filled him, but recognition, as if something ancient within him remembered the soil, the sea, the forests where heroes once stood. The goddess's song, though faint, still pulsed within his spirit, and though he could not name it, he carried the same light that once shone in the eyes of the goddess's chosen. The elders spoke of the Triforce, of the power left behind by Hylia. They taught that it rested somewhere beyond the clouds, waiting, hidden, protected by fate. But prophecy was not written in stone. It was whispered in dreams. And one night, as the sky darkened and the loftwings circled restlessly above the isles, the world shifted. The wind grew heavy, the air tense with expectation. A shadow crossed the stars, not of darkness, but of awakening. In that moment, far below the clouds, a seal that had endured since the age of Hylia trembled. The evil that the goddess had bound so long ago stirred once more, restless and ancient. The great cycle began to turn again, for where shadow rises, light must follow. The goddess's melody called for its next verse, and in that call the spirit of the hero awakened. He did not know his fate. He only felt it, a quiet pull toward something unseen, a promise older than time itself. And when the goddess's chosen, reborn in mortal form, descended from the sky, destiny began to unfold once more. It was said that the hero's courage is not learned, but remembered, passed down through ages, like a dream reborn in every soul brave enough to answer. The spirit of the hero, born in the light of Hylia, would never fade. It would sleep, perhaps, through centuries of silence, but when darkness called again, it would rise, silent, steadfast, eternal. And so the cycle began anew, not with gods or kings, but with a single dreamer, standing upon the edge of the clouds, staring into the unknown. For it is not divinity that defines a hero, but the quiet heart that answers the call when no one else will. The morning that followed felt unchanged to those who lived in Skyloft. Sunlight scattered gently across the floating isles, the calls of loftwings echoed through the mist, and the world seemed as peaceful as ever. Yet beneath that calm, the air carried an unseen tremor. Fate had begun to weave its invisible thread. The goddess's melody, long buried in silence, now resonated in a single mortal soul. Link awoke to that silent song. It was not a voice he could hear, but a feeling that stirred deep within his chest, a warmth, like sunlight finding its way through clouds. He could not name it, yet he knew it called him. The wind tugged at his hair, whispering secrets he could not quite understand. He looked to the horizon, where the light met the mist, and for a fleeting moment it felt as if the world was holding its breath. The people of Skyloft lived unknowing of the world beneath them, a world of forests, temples, and forgotten gods. They were safe above the clouds, untouched by the shadow that once consumed the surface. But destiny is patient. It waits in silence until courage stirs again, and when it does, the entire world listens. That night, the sky changed. The stars trembled, and the moon shone red as if remembering an ancient sorrow. From the heart of the goddess's statue came a light, soft at first, then radiant, cascading like water through stone. The harp of Hylia, untouched for centuries, began to hum once more. And in that moment, the spirit of the goddess reached through the veil of time and found her chosen. Link dreamed of wings, vast, golden, stretching into the clouds. He saw a world below, lush and endless, where ruins glimmered beneath sunlight and shadows slept beneath the trees. A voice, both distant and near, spoke within the dream, "Awaken. The seal weakens. The world needs you once more." When he woke, the dream did not fade. It lingered, soft as mist, real as breath. Then came the sign, a storm that tore through Skyloft, unlike any seen before. Winds howled as though the heavens themselves had been split open. And when it passed, the girl who had always been beside him, Zelda, was gone, carried through the clouds to the world below. In that moment, destiny revealed its purpose. The hero's path was never one of glory, but of loss. Every legend begins not in triumph, but in separation, a breaking that awakens the heart. Link stood beneath the pale dawn, feeling the weight of silence around him. He knew nothing of prophecy or gods. He only knew he had to find her. And in that knowing, the spirit of courage, long dormant, stirred awake within him. As he took his first step toward the edge of the clouds, the wind rose once more, circling around him like an unseen blessing. It carried the faintest trace of song, the melody of Hylia, ancient and kind, guiding him onward. For though gods may fade, there will endures through those who act in their name. And so, the boy who dreamed of skies became the hero of ages. His descent was not a fall, but a return to the earth, to memory, to destiny. The light that once shone in the eyes of the goddess now flickered in his own. And though he did not yet understand, the entire world, both above and below, waited for him to remember the song that would save them all. Time in Hyrule does not move as it does in the waking world. It drifts, curls, and folds upon itself, like a melody replayed in an endless dream. As the winds of destiny carried Link below the clouds, he entered not only the realm of the surface, but the echo of every age that would follow. Each step he took beneath the open sky became part of a song that would be sung for millennia. He descended through storm and silence until the mist broke, revealing the land that time had forgotten. The surface, a world both beautiful and scarred, breathed beneath him. Forests whispered with ancient memories. Rivers glowed faintly with forgotten magic. It was as though the earth itself remembered the goddess who had once protected it. And as Link took his first breath upon that soil, the land seemed to awaken, exhaling a sigh that had waited for centuries. Phi, the spirit of the sword, the divine echo of Hylia's own wisdom, appeared before him in shimmering light. Her voice was calm, crystalline, and eternal, like water falling over stone. She spoke not of destiny, but of purpose, of balance between light and shadow, courage and despair. She was not merely a guide, but the memory of the goddess herself, given form to lead the hero through the labyrinth of fate. Link listened, silent and still, his heart heavy with uncertainty. Yet beneath that uncertainty stirred something pure, the same quiet courage that had drawn him to leap from the skies for Zelda's sake. He did not yet understand what it meant to be chosen. He only knew that someone he loved was waiting, and that the world itself had begun to breathe through him. His journey became a hymn of awakening. Through temples carved in stone, where the songs of the ancients still lingered in the air, through forests haunted by echoes of those who had prayed to Hylia long ago, through trials that tested not his strength, but his will to endure. And with each step, his soul grew closer to something vast, something beyond the self. At the heart of his quest, Link came to understand a truth whispered across every age of Hyrule. Heroes are not born from prophecy, but from devotion. They are those who move even when the path is lost, who hold light even when the stars are gone. The goddess may guide them, but the choice, to rise, to fight, to believe, has always been their own. When he finally found Zelda, she was no longer merely the girl he had known. She was the spirit of the goddess reborn, carrying the memory of every world before their own. Their reunion was not the end of a journey, but the binding of two souls, one divine, one human, destined to weave the fate of all ages to come. Together, they sealed the darkness that threatened to devour the world, but in doing so sealed their own peace away with it. And so began the cycle, the eternal dance of light and shadow, of hero and calamity, of love and separation. Link's name would fade into myth, and Zelda's would echo in prayers whispered to the stars. Yet across time, their spirits would rise again, drawn to one another like the sun and the dawn. In every age, the legend is retold, not as history, but as hope. The people of Hyrule, the sages, and even the wind itself would remember. Whenever darkness returns, so too will courage. The blade will be lifted once more, and the goddess's song will echo across the land. And high above, in the endless sky where the clouds shimmer in eternal light, the goddess still watches. Her song, soft and unending, weaves through the hearts of those who dream. It whispers to those who play, who wander, who remember. It is not only a story of gods and heroes, but of us, too, the dreamers who find courage in quiet moments, who lift controllers like swords and step once more into that world of endless dawn. For in the land of Hyrule, the legend never ends. It only sleeps, waiting for another heart to awaken it once more. Long before the hero was born, before even the stones of Hyrule had hardened into form, there was only silence, and then light. Out of that first dawn came 3 golden flames that shaped the heavens, the earth, and the heart of all living things. They were the hands of creation, the breath of eternity, and their names would be whispered through all time. Din, Nehru, and Faror. Din, the goddess of power, danced in fire. With her blazing arms, she molded the land and summoned mountains from the void. Nehru, the goddess of wisdom, followed her in grace, spreading her hands across the empty world to weave law and order into its very air. And Faror, gentle and green as spring, came last, sowing seeds of life, gifting courage and will to all who would walk upon the soil. When their work was done, they ascended to the heavens once more, leaving behind a relic, 3 radiant triangles resting in divine symmetry. This sacred object, born from their essence, was known as the Triforce. It was not a weapon, nor a crown, but a mirror of the gods' creation, a balance of strength, wisdom, and courage. And yet, though divine in origin, it was meant for mortal hands. The Triforce held no will of its own. It did not judge, nor speak, nor love. It simply was. It would grant the heart's desire to whoever touched it, whether their wish was noble or corrupt. In that way, it was both a blessing and a test, for within the heart of creation lies the reflection of those who seek to wield it. As time flowed, kingdoms rose around this sacred relic. Priests whispered of its light, kings built temples to protect it, and legends formed like constellations in the minds of those who dreamed of it. But where desire gathers, so too does shadow. For the Triforce, in its silent promise, stirred both awe and greed. It is said that when the world was young, a man of the desert, one consumed by a hunger greater than any other, sought the Triforce for himself. His name was Ganondorf, king of thieves, born beneath a sky that knew no rain. He had seen suffering, powerlessness, and the cruelty of fate, and so he turned his gaze toward the golden light, believing it would grant him dominion over all. The moment his hand touched the sacred triangles, the balance of creation trembled. For his heart, though filled with strength, was fractured, divided by hatred, longing, and pride. The Triforce, unable to remain whole within such imperfection, split apart. 3 pieces fell away, power, wisdom, and courage scattering across Hyrule like falling stars. Din's flame entered the heart of Ganondorf, for his strength and will were unmatched. Nehru's light found its home in Zelda, whose wisdom reflected the grace of the goddess herself. And Faror's spark rested in the hero, the silent boy who would one day lift the blade of time. From that moment, history became the echo of their struggle, an eternal triangle drawn across generations. Power seeking dominion, wisdom seeking peace, courage rising to defend. It is not merely the story of heroes and villains, but the rhythm of existence itself, a song of harmony and conflict, balance and desire. And yet, beneath this divine geometry, there lingers a quiet truth that none of the 3 can exist alone. For power without wisdom destroys, wisdom without courage falters, and courage without power fades into dust. The Triforce, in its perfection, was never meant to be divided, but neither could it remain pure in mortal hands. In temples where the light of the gods still glimmers upon stone, monks once said the Triforce does not belong to the worthy, but to the one who seeks, not for self, but for the world. And perhaps that is why, in every age, it returns, waiting to be discovered not by kings or tyrants, but by those who still believe in the fragile beauty of balance. For as long as hearts beat with longing, the Triforce will endure, shining quietly in the space between dream and memory, whispering the eternal question to all who see it. If you were granted the power to remake the world, what would your heart truly wish for? When dawn first touched the peaks of Hyrule, it fell upon a land already divided by longing. The Triforce, though silent and unseen, had become a presence that shaped the hearts of men and gods alike. It was the promise of perfection, and the reminder that such perfection could never be held for long. Across the ages, kingdoms rose in its shadow. Each sought the blessing of the golden triangles, believing they could bind destiny to their will. Temples were built where the light of Din burned brightest, where the waters of Nehru shimmered, and where the winds of Faror carried whispers of the past. But though priests prayed and kings commanded, the Triforce remained unmoved, a relic of pure intent, beyond the reach of ambition. It is said that the Triforce reveals itself only to those whose heart is unbroken, whose soul mirrors the balance of the 3 virtues. But in a world where light and shadow are bound together, such purity is rare. And so, instead of peace, the search for the Triforce brought forth endless cycles of war and renewal, each era echoing the same song sung in a different voice. In one age, it was the kingdom of Hyrule, proud and resplendent beneath its castle walls. The royal family, bound by divine right, guarded the sacred relic with solemn devotion. Princess Zelda, descendant of the goddess's chosen line, carried the wisdom of her ancestors within her heart. Her dreams were not of conquest but of balance, to preserve the fragile harmony between gods, mortals, and time itself. And yet, from beyond the desert, the shadow of Ganondorf moved again. He was not a mere man, but the continuation of a curse, a spirit of power that could not die. Each age gave him a new face, each story a new name, but his desire never changed. He sought the Triforce not for creation, but for control, to bend fate to his will and forge a kingdom without light or mercy. When his armies marched, and the sky turned red, the world once more called upon its hero. He came, as he always did, from humble beginnings, a child of no renown, guided by courage that shone brighter than gold. In every telling, his form changed. Sometimes a boy of the forest, sometimes a sailor upon a distant sea, sometimes a wanderer between worlds. But within him burned the same eternal flame, the spirit of Faror, the pulse of life itself. Zelda and the hero, bound by destiny, stood together beneath the shadow of Ganondorf's ambition. Their bond was not born of chance, but of cosmic rhythm, a harmony older than the stars. Each carried one fragment of the Triforce, and together they balanced what the gods had once left whole. When the clash finally came, it was never merely a battle of sword and sorcery. It was the meeting of ideals, power against wisdom, darkness against light, and courage standing between them. The Triforce, hidden yet watching, glowed faintly in the unseen realm, as if remembering its own purpose. And though the outcome changed from age to age, sometimes the hero triumphed, sometimes the darkness rose, the story always ended in the same way, with the balance restored, if only for a time. The Triforce, like the tide, retreated into myth again, leaving behind ruins, memories, and silence. But even silence carries whispers. The sages, ancient and unseen, taught that the Triforce is not merely a relic to be found, it is a reflection within every living soul. For every heart carries fragments of power, wisdom, and courage. The balance between them shapes all destinies, great and small. And so, when the wind moves through Hyrule Field, or the waves lap gently against the shores of Windfall Island, perhaps it is the echo of the Triforce breathing softly, a divine reminder that creation is an endless cycle of giving, losing, and beginning again. For in every age, no matter how forgotten, a new hand will rise to grasp the sword, a new heart will awaken to its calling, and a new story will begin. As the golden triangles shimmer quietly in the space between dream and destiny. The wind that once howled across the plains of Hyrule has grown soft, carrying with it only echoes, faint whispers of a world that seems both ancient and eternal. The wars have ended, the swords have fallen still, and the golden triangles sleep once more in the cradle of myth. Yet in the stillness, the Triforce endures, shining in silence like a star that refuses to fade. In every age, when the land is healed and peace returns, the memory of conflict drifts into legend. The people speak of a hero who rose from nothing, a princess whose wisdom guided the light, and a shadow who could not be undone. They call them by many names, Link, Zelda, Ganondorf, but their essence never changes. They are the living reflections of what the Triforce has always been. Power, wisdom, and courage made flesh. The gods no longer walk among mortals, yet their design still breathes in the rhythm of this cycle. For the Triforce is not merely an artifact, it is the heartbeat of creation itself. Every time darkness threatens to swallow the light, the balance stirs, calling forth its champions. And though each story ends differently, its melody is the same. A song of balance lost and found again, of unity torn apart only to be made whole. Some say the Triforce lies hidden deep within the sacred realm, sealed away by the gods to protect it from mortal folly. Others whisper that it has long since dissolved into the very fabric of the world, its fragments scattered across every living soul, waiting for the moment they awaken. Perhaps that is why, in quiet moments, one might feel a flicker of its presence, a sudden courage when fear tightens the heart, a moment of clarity when the world seems too vast to bear, or a strength that rises from nowhere when all else has failed. Because the Triforce was never meant to belong to one. It was meant to belong to all. Power to act, wisdom to guide, courage to endure, these are not relics to be found, but virtues to be lived. The gods, in their infinite design, did not leave behind a prize, but a reflection, a reminder of what it means to be human in a world forever poised between creation and decay. And so, the story does not truly end. When the moonlight touches the temple of time, when the rustle of leaves carries an old melody through forgotten woods, when the ocean glimmers like gold under a silent sky, the legend stirs again. Somewhere, a young hero awakens. Somewhere, a princess dreams of balance. Somewhere, the shadow waits, patient and proud. This is the eternal song of Hyrule, the melody of three forces in eternal motion. It has no final verse, no true silence. Only the quiet promise that as long as there is light and shadow, the world will keep spinning, and destiny will find new hands to hold the sword, the crown, and the flame. For the Triforce was never the end of the story. It is the breath between beginnings, the spark that lights the next dream. And perhaps as you close your eyes tonight, you may hear its faint hum, golden, endless, and full of peace. There is a hush that lives between the echoes of battle, a silence where the sound of destiny is forged. In that stillness, where courage meets eternity, stands a single blade. It rests upon its pedestal, half asleep, half awake, waiting for the one whose heart carries the courage of the gods. It is more than a weapon. It is memory made metal, the master sword, the blade of time. They say it was born from divinity itself, shaped in an age when the world was still new and light had not yet learned to fear the dark. Forged by the goddess Hylia, it was meant not for kings or conquerors, but for the chosen, a soul bound to the eternal rhythm of balance. The blade's purpose was never conquest, but preservation. It was designed to repel evil, to sever shadow from light, and to remind the world that even darkness has limits. When Hylia created the Master Sword, she wove into it the essence of time itself. For time, like courage, moves only forward, unyielding, unstoppable, and eternal. And so the sword became a key between eras, a bridge between what was and what must be. Every hero who draws its steps not only into battle, but into destiny's endless circle. The first to wield it was not yet called hero. He was but a spirit of courage born from mortal will, guided by the goddess's voice through storms of shadow. The sword did not grant him strength, it revealed the strength already within. And when he raised it high, the very air shimmered, as though the world itself remembered what it meant to hope. In every age that followed, the Master Sword returned. Its resting place changed, sometimes hidden within the temple of time, sometimes sleeping in sacred groves where ancient trees whispered in forgotten tongues. Yet it always waited for the same soul, the one destined to rise when darkness fell. It never chose through power or title, but through purity of heart, through courage that does not waver even when the light seems lost. Legends tell that when the hero draws the blade, time itself pauses, the wind stills, the birds fall silent, and the world holds its breath. For in that moment, the line between mortal and divine disappears. The hero does not merely grasp steel, he touches the will of the gods. The sword hums faintly, resonating with the Triforce of courage that dwells within him, as if greeting an old friend across centuries. Yet the sword's light is not eternal. Its purity dims when hatred rises, when kingdoms crumble, and when faith is forgotten. It must sleep to restore itself, to remember the purpose it was forged for. And so it becomes a legend, buried, sealed, or lost, until the world's need becomes too great, and courage awakens once more. Some say the sword weeps in its slumber, that its steel remembers every soul who has fallen while bearing it. Others believe it dreams, seeing the faces of the heroes who will come and whispering their names through the flow of time. For the Master Sword is not bound by years. It exists where destiny turns, where one era dies and another begins. Even now, beneath the ruins and quiet fields of Hyrule, it waits. The pedestal gleams faintly under moonlight, untouched by decay, its surface marked by the passage of countless hands. The forest breathes around it, not with sorrow, but with peace. It knows the cycle will turn again. It knows that when courage is needed, the sword will awaken. For though its blade may rest, its spirit never fades. The Master Sword endures, the eternal guardian of balance, the song of light given form, the silent witness of all that has been and all that will return. Deep beneath the canopy of Hyrule's sacred groves, where the light filters through in trembling shafts of gold, the Master Sword lies still, as if the forest itself guards it with breathless reverence. Moss clings softly to the stones surrounding its pedestal, and the air hums with a quiet holiness, a sound not quite music, yet not quite silence either. Here, time moves differently. Seconds feel like centuries, and centuries like moments. For the sword is not only a weapon, it is a vessel of remembrance. Within its blade, stories sleep like dreams preserved in crystal. Each time it is drawn, those memories awaken. The echo of footsteps on temple floors, the clang of battle, the whispered prayers of heroes long gone. Every swing of the blade carries their courage. Every gleam of light across its edge reflects their souls. It is not one sword, but many, the same blade reborn across eras, holding fragments of countless lifetimes within its shining core. When the hero first grasps the hilt, there is a stillness, an almost sacred hesitation. For in that touch, the past awakens. The hands of every hero before him seem to guide his own, their courage flowing into his heart like sunlight through glass. The sword does not speak, yet it remembers. And that memory becomes strength. The sages say the Master Sword was once known as the Goddess Sword, long before it took the form mortals now know. It was the blade of Hylia herself, a fragment of her will, tempered by divine flame and sealed by her own grace. Over time, as the world changed and the goddess's voice faded into myth, the sword took on a life of its own. It learned to wait, to listen, to endure. In the temple of time, where centuries gather like dust, the sword's pedestal glows faintly under the light of the stained glass above. When the hero approaches, the chamber breathes stone shifting subtly, air trembling like a sigh. It is as though the temple recognizes the return of its destined guest. He steps forward, hand trembling not with fear but with the weight of inevitability. And as his fingers close around the hilt, the song of time itself begins to play, a melody not of instruments, but of eternity unfolding. Light bursts forth. The temple dissolves into brilliance. For a moment, the world stands between heartbeats, the past, present, and future folding into one shimmering instant. This is the power the sword carries, the ability to part the veil of time and grant passage between eras. Not through magic alone, but through purpose, for only a spirit aligned with destiny can awaken such force. And when the light fades, the hero stands renewed. The world has shifted. The air feels different, the colors softer, as though reality itself has been reborn. The sword hums in his hand, its glow steady and warm, not the fire of wrath, but the light of resolve. Yet even the purest light casts a shadow. With every age, the Master Sword has faced corruption, forces seeking to twist its essence for their own ends. There were times when darkness tried to seep into its metal, when hatred itself sought to fracture its calm. But the blade, bound by the will of the goddess, could never be broken. Even when its shine dimmed, its heart remained untainted, for it carries not just divine power, but mortal hope, the most unbreakable force of all. Sometimes, in the deep of night, when no hero walks the land and no kingdom calls its name, the sword rests beneath the stars. It listens to the wind, to the rivers, to the quiet heartbeat of Hyrule. It waits not for glory, but for balance, for the next moment when courage will rise again. For though ages pass and empires fall, one truth remains. The sword and the hero are never truly apart. They are bound by the same thread that ties every dawn to every dusk, a promise written in light. The blade remembers, and through that memory, the world continues, when all is quiet, and the wars of men have ended like fading echoes in the canyon of eternity. The master sword sleeps once more. It stands upright in its stone cradle, the forest reclaiming its silence around it. Dew gathers on its hilt each morning, as if the world itself bows in gratitude to the weapon that bore the weight of countless destinies. The sun filters gently through the trees, brushing its blade with gold. To an unknowing wanderer, it might seem merely a relic, an artifact of some forgotten age, half lost to the moss and mist. But to those who still listen, truly listen, the air here hums faintly with divinity. The sword breathes in silence. It waits, not for war, but for purpose. Time, in its endless motion, always returns to this place. The same way rivers find the sea, the same way dawn returns to the hills. The master sword has no beginning and no end. It simply is, suspended in the flow of existence. When one era of courage closes its eyes, another opens them anew. And when darkness dares to rise, the song of the goddess stirs once more beneath the surface of the world. Legends whisper that when the hero finally rests, when his spirit drifts beyond the veil of dreams, a faint light remains within the blade. His courage does not fade but fuses with the metal, becoming one with the eternal song of time. Every new hero, every new bearer of fate, inherits not just a weapon, but the heartbeat of all who came before. Sometimes, under the moon's silver gaze, the wind carries faint voices through the glade, not of the living, but of memory. They sing softly, a hymn that speaks of unity, of endless struggle and return. The master sword listens, gleaming faintly in response, its edge catching the pale glow of the stars. It remembers battles, tears, laughter, promises, all the fragments that make a world whole. The sages say the sword is not bound to any one kingdom or faith, it is bound to balance. For every age that leans too far into darkness, a spark of light is born somewhere in its heart. And for every age of light that grows blind to its own pride, the blade grows heavy, weary of perfection. The master sword does not serve good or evil. It serves harmony, the equilibrium between courage, wisdom, and power. In time, the forest will thicken. Roots will curl around the pedestal like the arms of a guardian. Birds will nest in the branches above, and the songs of mourning will replace the cries of battle. The blade will slumber on, patient and eternal, its reflection shimmering faintly in the still pools of the earth. And one day, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps in 1,000 years, the world will tremble again. The earth will cry out, and a new hero will rise. Guided by dreams of light, he will find his way to this place. The forest will part as it always has, and the sword will recognize his soul before his hand even reaches it. The air will glow. The world will pause, and once again, the cycle will begin. The master sword will awaken, singing softly in the language of time, the voice of every hero who ever lived, and every dawn yet to come. For in the heart of Hyrule, in the stillness between ages, one truth endures. Light and shadow are never enemies, only dancers in an endless song. And the blade, eternal, patient, and bright, is their melody. In the beginning, before the stone walls were raised and before kings wore crowns of gold, there was only the land, wide, untamed, and breathing with quiet divinity. The rivers shimmered like strands of silver under the dawn, and the wind carried the scent of new beginnings. This land would one day be called Hyrule, but in those first ages, it was known only by the gods who shaped it and the spirits who sang within its soil. From the heavens above, light descended in 3 golden arcs, the blessings of the goddesses Din, Nehru, and Faror. Their touch sculpted the mountains, the seas, and the hearts of all living things. From their divine harmony, the world was born, a realm balanced between strength, wisdom, and courage. And where their creation met in perfect union, they left behind a sacred mark, the Triforce, hidden deep within the land that would bear its name. Generations passed, and the wild beauty of Hyrule began to take shape. Settlements grew where rivers met the plains, and temples rose toward the sun like prayers carved in stone. From humble beginnings, tribes united beneath a single banner, guided by a vision of peace and order. The first kings of Hyrule were said to be descendants of the goddess Hylia herself, chosen to guard both the Triforce and the balance it represented. Their oaths were sworn not in conquest, but in reverence to serve the land, not to rule it. As time flowed like the rivers of Lanayru, the kingdom flourished. The people built cities of marble and light, and the skies were filled with the sound of bells calling to prayer. The castle of Hyrule rose at the realm's heart, surrounded by gardens that glowed beneath the moonlight. It was said that within its halls, time itself seemed slower, as though the goddesses still lingered in its air, listening to the dreams of their creation. But peace, even divine, is never eternal. Shadows began to gather at the edges of the realm, whispers of greed, envy, and forgotten power. Those who gazed upon the Triforce saw in its golden light not harmony, but opportunity. And so the history of Hyrule became a story written in cycles, ages of light followed by nights of despair, each repeating like an eternal breath. Still, through every fall, the kingdom endured. When darkness rose, heroes followed. When kings faltered, the spirit of courage answered. The people of Hyrule believed that the goddesses themselves had woven their fate into the tapestry of the stars, that no matter how many times the kingdom fell, its light would always return, born again through the faith of its people. In every corner of the land, the old songs still echoed, hymns to Hylia, to the sacred sword, to the eternal hero. The wind that swept across the plains of Hyrule Field carried fragments of those songs, mixing with the scent of wildflowers and rain. Children played near the ruins of ancient temples, unaware that the stones beneath their feet had once witnessed gods and legends. And far beyond the capital, in the highlands and forests, there were still those who remembered the old ways. The Shaker watched from the shadows, silent protectors of secrets too ancient for kings. The Gorons shaped the mountains, their laughter echoing in the fiery caverns. The Zora sang in the deep waters, their voices rippling through the rivers like crystal light. And in the hidden woods, the Kokiri never aged, forever living in the dream of the first dawn. Hyrule was not merely a kingdom, it was a living memory, a bridge between mortal and divine. Every stone, every breeze, every star reflected the will of those three golden goddesses. And though centuries would pass and empires would rise and crumble, the essence of Hyrule would remain, a promise whispered by the wind that balance would always return. As twilight settled upon the land, the kingdom rested once more beneath the watchful eyes of the heavens. The torches of the castle flickered like stars come to earth, and the moon cast its light upon the sacred fields. Somewhere, far away, a faint melody began to play, the same tune sung at the world's first dawn. It was the song of Hyrule itself, soft and eternal, waiting for the next chapter of its endless tale. Beneath the golden banners and the serene expanse of the royal gardens, the kingdom of Hyrule began to dream of eternity. Its towers reached toward the clouds, polished by the winds of centuries, and the bells of the castle tolled like a heartbeat through the land. Each ring carried the voice of an ancient promise. That light would always guard the world against shadow, and that peace, though fragile, was worth every sacrifice made to preserve it. The people of Hyrule thrived in this dream. Farmers tended fields that glimmered under the morning dew, their hands guided by the blessings of Pharaoh. Scholars gathered in candlelit halls, studying scrolls that whispered of the goddess's wisdom, while warriors trained beneath the statues of Din, swearing to uphold her fiery strength. The kingdom was not merely a place to live, It was a way to belong, an echo of something divine that reminded its people they were part of a greater story. But within the heart of all greatness lies a quiet tension, the slow pull between pride and devotion. As centuries passed, Hyrule's faith in the goddesses became woven into ritual rather than remembrance. Kings built temples taller, scholars wrote more ornate prayers, and nobles chased splendor like moths drawn to the sun. Yet in the pursuit of perfection, they began to forget the humility that first bound them to the divine. There were whispers in the court of an imbalance, of magic fading in the sacred springs, of storms that came without reason, and of the once bright Triforce shimmering with unease. The royal seers spoke of cycles turning, of fate remembering what mortals forget. For in Hyrule, every piece is but the silence before the next awakening, the calm before the song begins again. In the hidden shadows of the realm, the Shaker watched these changes with quiet concern. Guardians of secrets and silent watchers of destiny, they carried memories older than the kingdom itself. Within their stone sanctuaries, they carved messages into walls that no ordinary eye could read, prophecies of bloodlines intertwined with the spirit of the hero and the shadow that always followed. When the kingdom grows too bright, one saying went, the darkness will find its way home. Meanwhile, far beyond the gleaming walls of the capital, the simple lives of Hyrule's people continued to weave the rhythm of the world. In Kakariko, old storytellers spoke by the fire of the hero who would always return. In the forests, the Kakiri danced among eternal leaves. And in the mountains, the Gorons still sang to the heart of stone, their laughter rising with the smoke of the earth's breath. The beauty of Hyrule was that it lived not only in the castle's crown, but in the pulse of its people, each soul a thread in the great tapestry the goddesses once began. Yet even in those quiet corners, dreams began to shift. A young scribe noticed that the stars no longer followed their usual paths. A priest at the Temple of Time heard a hum beneath the altar, faint but steady, like a heartbeat returning from sleep. And in the archives of the royal library, the oldest scrolls began to crack and flake, revealing new words beneath the old, as if the past itself was rewriting its story. The kingdom felt it, though none dared to name it. Something ancient stirred beneath the soil and sky, something that had been waiting since the first dawn of Hyrule. The Triforce, the silent heart of balance, trembled within its sacred resting place. For when wisdom, courage, and power lose their harmony, the world begins to hum with imbalance, and destiny calls for renewal. And somewhere, far from the palace walls, a new wind began to rise, cool, uncertain, but full of purpose. It moved through the forests, across the plains, and into the ruins of old temples, carrying a soft song. It was the same song sung when the goddesses shaped the land, the lullaby of beginnings and endings. In that wind was a whisper, almost human. Awaken, for the kingdom remembers. When dusk fell upon the kingdom of Hyrule, the air grew heavy with memory. The towers turned gold beneath the setting sun, and the rivers caught its light like ribbons of amber, winding toward the distant sea. The castle bells tolled once more, not in warning, but in remembrance. Each note rippled through the land, soft and mournful, like the sigh of an old friend who knows that change is near. In the heart of the castle, within chambers lined with time-worn stone, an ancient flame flickered. It was said to have burned since the founding of the kingdom, a divine light gifted by the goddess Hylia herself. Its glow had dimmed and brightened with each age, like the pulse of the world. Tonight, it danced uncertainly, casting shifting shadows that seemed to whisper stories of heroes past. The queen stood before that flame, her reflection wavering within it. She had read the old prophecies, the ones that spoke of cycles, of rise and fall, of courage reborn when hope was lost. And she knew, deep within her heart, that the peace they cherished was not everlasting. For Hyrule's fate was a spiral, not a line, always returning to its beginning, always awaiting the song that would wake it again. Outside the castle walls, the people went about their evening. Children chased fireflies through the meadows, their laughter echoing like bells in the night. Farmers offered their final prayers to the stars. And in the forests, the ancient spirits, long forgotten by mortal tongues, stirred within the roots of the sacred trees. All around, the kingdom breathed as one vast being, its heart both weary and strong. In Kakariko, an elder recited the old tales once more, of a hero chosen by destiny, a princess of light, and a shadow born from man's desire for power. His voice trembled, not with age, but with knowing that these stories were not merely the past, but the rhythm of Hyrule itself. They were dreams the land could not stop dreaming. The Triforce still rested within its hidden chamber, untouched by mortal hands, yet alive with quiet motion. Its golden glow pulsed in threefold harmony, each piece singing its eternal song of wisdom that sees, of courage that acts, of power that endures. It was balance and it was burden. And though the world slept, the Triforce remembered everything. Perhaps that is the secret of Hyrule, that even in silence its story continues. Empires crumble, heroes fade, and the wind changes its name, but somewhere the melody remains. The goddesses hum through the leaves, the rivers carry their lullaby, and when the world forgets, destiny remembers. A soft wind passed through the fields, carrying the scent of rain. The torches of the castle dimmed one by one, leaving only the starlight to guard the realm. The land grew still, listening. And in that stillness, a faint echo rose from far away, from the edges of the forest where light and shadow meet. It was the whisper of a new dawn, the quiet promise that the hero would return, that balance would be restored, and that the story would continue as it always had. Hyrule slept beneath the gaze of the stars, dreaming of golden triangles, of wings of light, of a world forever caught between destiny and peace. And somewhere in that dream a voice, ancient and kind, murmured softly, "Sleep, Hyrule, for the song will begin again." In the farthest reaches of Hyrule's memory, beyond the songs of heroes and the prayers of queens, there lingers a darkness that was never fully gone. It sleeps in the blood of the earth, coiled like a serpent beneath the roots of time, waiting for the tremor of imbalance to stir it once more. The people call it by many names: the calamity, the great shadow, the thief king reborn. But to those who remember the first age, it has only ever been one thing: Ganon. He was not always a monster. Before the world gave him form and fury, he was desire itself, the yearning of all mortal hearts that crave power beyond reason. It was said that when the goddesses shaped the Triforce, a fragment of shadow was left behind, a residue of the ambition they could not erase. And from that shadow, a will emerged, ancient, patient, and burning with envy for the light. When Hyrule was young, this darkness found a vessel. He was born among the Gerudo, a people of the desert winds and the endless sun. Once in 100 years, a man was born among them, marked by destiny. His name was Ganondorf. To his kin, he was a leader and a warrior of unmatched strength. But to fate, he was something else, the embodiment of imbalance, drawn to the power of the gods not for wisdom or courage, but for dominion. Legends say he first saw the Triforce in a dream, a golden light suspended in the void. He reached for it, and it burned him, yet he could not turn away. When he awoke, his heart was no longer his own. The desert winds whispered to him, promising glory, promising immortality. And so he set his eyes upon Hyrule, the kingdom blessed with everything his homeland lacked: water, green, life. To him, Hyrule was not a realm to conquer, but a symbol to rewrite. He gathered armies beneath his banner, uniting thieves and outcasts, forging them into a force that moved like a storm. His voice was a spell, his ambition a fire that consumed loyalty and fear alike. When he marched across the plains, even the wind seemed to bend around him. The people of Hyrule whispered prayers to their goddesses, but the horizon only darkened. In those days, the royal seers warned the queen. Power seeks itself, and where one fragment burns too bright, the others must awaken. Thus began the cycle once more, the call of courage, the awakening of wisdom, and the rise of power in its purest, most terrible form. Ganondorf, whether by fate or defiance, stepped into his role with unshakable certainty. When he first entered the sacred realm, the air itself trembled. The Triforce recognized him, not as a chosen, but as a claimant, and when his hand touched its light, the balance fractured. The holy power split into three. Power stayed with him, embedding itself within his soul like a curse of flame. The other two fled, one to wisdom, one to courage, to the destined pair who would stand against him. From that moment, Ganondorf ceased to be merely a man. His body could fall, but his essence endured, reborn again and again through the corridors of time. In every age his name changed, but his purpose did not. Sometimes he rose as a king, sometimes as a beast, sometimes as a shadow that whispered through dreams. Yet no matter the form, his hunger was the same, to seize the light, to silence the balance, and to prove that power alone could shape eternity. The sages tried to seal him, and the goddesses themselves turned away their gaze. But Hyrule's curse, and its beauty, was that time could never truly erase its own echoes. Each age birthed its hero, its princess and its demon, dancing again upon the same fragile thread of destiny. And in the quiet corners of the world, where darkness met the wind, the people whispered. When Ganon sleeps, the world exhales, but when he dreams, the world trembles. In the deepest folds of Hyrule's history, shadow does not fade, it learns. It waits beneath the rhythm of the world, studying each light that dares to rise. Ganon, the eternal bearer of power, was not merely an enemy of kingdoms. He was the embodiment of desire itself. Every age that sought peace unknowingly nourished his return, for where there is order, the whisper of dominion is never far behind. After the first sealing, when the sages bound him in chains of divine flame, the world believed him gone. Temples were built, prayers were sung, and the story of his defeat passed into legend. But beneath the sacred realm, in a silence untouched by time, he dreamed. The Triforce of power pulsed within him, feeding on his fury, keeping his spirit alive long after his flesh had fallen away. The seal did not destroy him, it preserved him, like a wound that refused to close. Centuries passed, and yet his presence lingered. The world above moved through cycles of rebirth, kings crowned, heroes born, eras forgotten. But the balance always shifted, faintly, imperceptibly, toward unrest. Crops withered for no reason. The rivers grew still. The air trembled as if remembering something ancient. Those attuned to magic, the shaker, the sages, the forest spirits began to hear it again, the low hum of Ganon's awakening. They said his malice moved like smoke through the cracks of time. It drifted through dreams, whispering to the proud and the desperate alike. Some heard promises of power, others voices of their lost loved ones. But all paths led to ruin, for the shadow of Ganon does not ask, it consumes. In every generation, someone answers his call, mistaking it for their own ambition. And so, even before he takes form, his spirit lives through those who follow his hunger. In the temples of Hyrule, light grew restless. The master sword, the blade of evil's bane, trembled faintly in its pedestal, as though sensing what lay ahead. And deep within the forests, the fairies who had once sung freely now hid in silence. The goddess's blessing still protected the land, but their strength waned each time the cycle began anew. The more often the Triforce was touched, the weaker the barrier between worlds became. When Ganon finally returned, it was not with an army, but with a storm. Black clouds gathered over Hyrule Field, their edges lit by crimson fire. The wind howled with the sound of 1,000 voices, echoes of every age he had touched. From the darkness emerged his form, both beast and man, burning with the same purpose that had haunted him since the dawn of time. The Triforce of power shone on his hand like a brand, and his eyes glowed with the memory of godhood denied. The people fled, temples fell. The rivers ran dark as if mourning. And yet, within that destruction, something unbroken endured, the faint, stubborn glow of courage and wisdom. For every shadow that rose, light answered, even if it flickered weakly at first. The princess dreamt of a golden realm untouched by evil, and somewhere, in the wilds beyond the reach of kings, a hero stirred from slumber. Their meeting was inevitable, written into the bones of the world itself. Each time Ganon reached toward eternity, the balance summoned them, not to destroy him, but to remind him. For even darkness, however eternal, exists only because of the light it defies. And so the hero drew the sword, and the shadow took its form once more. Lightning split the heavens. The Triforce gleamed with sorrow and grace. It was not a battle between good and evil, but between forgetting and remembrance, the endless struggle to preserve harmony in a world that cannot stand still. When the final blow struck, and Ganon's form dissolved into dust and smoke, the silence that followed was almost kind. The wind stilled. The stars returned, and somewhere in that quiet, the land exhaled. But those who understood Hyrule's truth did not celebrate. They bowed their heads and whispered, "He sleeps again." For the shadow of Ganon is not death, it is the dream of the world's darker half, and every dream, sooner or later, awakens. When the dust of battle settled and silence claimed the fields of Hyrule, the world seemed to breathe once more. The moon rose over the plains, casting silver light upon the ruins left behind, temples cracked, banners torn, the scent of smoke fading into the night. Yet amid that stillness, there was peace, fragile and trembling, like a candle that had survived the storm. In the heart of the sacred realm, the remnants of Ganon's spirit drifted like ash upon the wind. Power, no longer bound to form or flesh, pulsed faintly in the air, a heartbeat without a body, a will without a voice. He had been sealed again, as countless times before, his essence trapped in the echoing void between worlds. And yet, even in defeat, the darkness smiled. For Ganon understood something the living often forgot, that every victory of light only sharpens the shadow behind it. Every age of peace grows complacent. Every song of triumph becomes a whisper of the next fall. The goddesses had created balance, but they had also created longing. And longing, eternal and patient, would always find its way back into the world. As centuries turned, the memory of his terror faded into myth. Children listened to the tales by candlelight, clutching their blankets as elders spoke of the great demon king who once sought to seize the power of the gods. To them, it was a story distant, safe. They did not see how his shadow lingered still, hidden in the cracks of ambition, in the hearts of those who wished for more than the world could give. The desert, where he was born, became quiet again. The sands buried the ruins of his empire, the wind smoothing over all traces of his reign. And yet, on certain nights when the moon hung red and low, travelers claimed to see faint embers glowing on the horizon, like the heartbeat of a sleeping god. The Gerudo told stories of their lost king, neither condemning nor forgiving him, for even they knew that the will of destiny could not be undone. Within the royal archives of Hyrule, the scholars continued their work. They chronicled the return of the hero, the restoration of the kingdom, the blessing of the Triforce renewed. But deep within the sealed vaults, far beneath the Temple of Time, an ancient sigil pulsed faintly. Its glow was faint, crimson like dying coals, marking the truth that few dared to speak. The seal was never meant to last forever, and so the cycle endured. When the land flourished, when laughter filled the air, when peace seemed unshakable, that was when the whispers began again. A dream of golden power, a wind that carried a familiar dread, the reflection of flame in still water. Each age forgot, and each age remembered, and through it all, Ganon waited not as a monster, but as the shadow that balance required. For without darkness, light would lose its meaning. Without greed, courage would not rise. Without despair, wisdom would not endure. Ganon was not the end, he was the mirror. The truth that even in a world blessed by gods, imperfection will always seek to return home. As dawn touched the kingdom once more, the hero laid his sword to rest. The princess watched the sun rise with quiet eyes, knowing that peace was never forever, only a pause in the song. The wind carried her prayer across the hills, over the rivers, through the forests, and into the desert beyond. "Sleep now, shadow of power," she whispered. "Rest until the world forgets again." And beneath the sands, in the silence between heartbeats, something ancient listened. The flame flickered once, and then went still, for now Hyrule could dream. There are melodies older than memory, songs woven into the roots of the world, carried by wind and water long before the first kingdom was raised. They were not written, for they could not be captured. They lived only in the breath of the goddesses and in the hearts of those chosen to listen. These were the songs of the sages, the keepers of time, of harmony, of the unseen bonds between realms. Their music was not merely sound, it was the voice of creation itself. When the goddesses shaped the world, it was said they sang together. Din's melody forged mountains, Nehru's harmony carved rivers, and Pharaoh's rhythm gave life to the forests. From that divine chorus came the essence of balance, and when the goddesses departed, they left echoes behind, echoes entrusted to mortal guardians, the sages. In each age, new sages arose, drawn from the spirit of the elements and the courage of their hearts. They were bound not by blood, but by song, each one carrying a fragment of the divine harmony, a single note that, when joined with the others, could awaken the sacred power of the gods. It was through their music that light and dark were held apart, that the gate to the sacred realm could open and close like a sigh. But with time, the songs began to fade. Notes were lost, harmonies forgotten, temples silenced. Kingdoms rose and fell, and the memory of the sages became myth. The melodies that once sealed evil, healed wounds, and guided heroes through their destinies were whispered only in dreams. Fragments of lullabies sung by mothers to children, or played by wandering minstrels beneath starlit skies, never knowing the power their tune once held. Some say the ocarina of time was born to preserve those echoes, a vessel not of clay, but of memory. Through it, a chosen hero could recall the voices of ages past, bridging the silence that time had claimed. And when he played, the world seemed to remember itself. Winds changed direction. The sun paused in its arc. Tears turned to laughter. Such was the resonance of a song that remembered creation. Yet, deep within the ruins of forgotten temples, the air still trembles faintly. The song of the forest drifts between the trees, light as morning mist. The song of fire hums beneath the earth, pulsing with the heart of magma. The song of water moves with the tides, its melody both soothing and sorrowful. These are not relics, but living memories, waiting for ears pure enough to hear them again. And among them all, one melody remains unplayed, the lost song, said to hold the final key to uniting all realms of light and shadow. Its existence is a whisper, a myth within a myth, for no sage has ever found it. Some believe it was hidden by the goddesses themselves, sealed within the dream of the first note, so that only when the world truly listens, without pride, without fear, will the song reveal itself once more. As night falls over Hyrule, the wind carries faint harmonies across the land. In the fields, in the ruins, in the echoing caverns beneath the mountains, they rise and fade like breaths of forgotten gods. The people hear them in their sleep, mistaking them for dreams. But the sages, those few who still remember, know the truth. The songs are calling again. In the quiet folds of time, where night and dawn meet without sound, the songs of the sages lie dreaming, half remembered, half alive. The wind carries their faint refrains over the hills of Hyrule, through the ancient groves where moss clings to stone, and into the empty chambers of the temples long abandoned. Each note is a whisper from the past, a heartbeat from an age when music was magic, and every melody shaped the world. It is said that the first sage to hear the divine harmony again was a wanderer, a minstrel who played for no one but the stars. His harp was strung with silver threads, his voice soft as twilight. One night, as he played beside the ruins of an old shrine, the air around him shimmered. The strings began to vibrate on their own, answering a sound beyond his hearing. And in that moment, the melody came to him, not from memory, but from the silence between thoughts. He called it the Song of Light. When he played it, the darkness seemed to retreat, and lost spirits found peace in its sound. But as soon as dawn broke, the song faded from his fingers, as though it belonged to the night alone. He wandered the land, searching for its echo, meeting others who, too, had felt the faint pull of the forgotten music. Thus the scattered descendants of the sages began to stir, not bound by blood, but by resonance. They found fragments of the old hymns hidden in unlikely places, a mural deep within the temple of time, whose painted figures seemed to hum when moonlight touched them, a lullaby carved into the stones of a fountain, and a rhythm marked into the wings of a sacred owl that guarded the forest's heart. Each discovery brought them closer to harmony, yet the melody always eluded completion, as though the goddesses themselves wished to test their patience and faith. Some fragments were darker, humming with power that frightened even the brave. One was said to be the Dirge of Shadow, a song so mournful it could draw tears from the stones themselves. It was a song of endings, composed when the sages sealed away the great evils of the past. To play it was to remember pain, but also to understand the balance of sorrow and light. For the sages knew that without grief, joy would have no voice. The wanderers became pilgrims. The pilgrims became guardians. And though they never found all the songs, they learned to listen beyond sound, to the rhythm of rivers, the whisper of leaves, the pulse of the stars. Through them, the sages began to sing once more, not with their mouths, but with the very essence of life itself. The melody was no longer something to be played, but something to be. It was said that one day a hero would come, a soul attuned to every note of existence, who could unite the scattered melodies of the world and restore the harmony lost to time. And when that day arrived, even the stones of the temple would tremble, for the song of the sages would awaken fully. The ocarina would sound, the harp would join, and the world would breathe in tune with creation once again. But for now, the music sleeps. The winds carry fragments across the land, weaving them into dreams. In the night, travelers may hear faint melodies in the rustle of grass or the ripple of water, unaware that they are brushing against divine memory. To the waking mind, it is nothing. But to those who still remember, to those who feel the faint ache of the world's unfinished song, it is everything. The lost songs are not gone. They are waiting, not for a hero, not for power, but for someone who still believes that harmony is possible. Someone who still listens. And in the silence that follows, the earth hums softly, as if remembering its own beginning. When the night deepens, and even the stars seem to sleep, Hyrule breathes in its ancient rhythm, the faintest echo of a music too vast for mortal ears. It hums beneath the soil, between the roots of trees older than kingdoms, beneath lakes that have mirrored both gods and ghosts. The sages are gone, their temples in ruin, their names softened by time, yet their melodies still linger, stitched into the fabric of the world itself. Some say that in the quiet hours before dawn, the wind carries a chorus not born of this age. It moves like a sigh through the grasslands, touches the ruins of forgotten sanctuaries, and trembles through the empty halls where light once pooled like holy water. Those who wander there, shepherds, hermits, or dreamers, speak of hearing a tune without a source, something so beautiful and sorrowful that it feels like remembering a dream one never lived. The scholars call it superstition. The priests call it divine residue. But those who have truly heard it know better. It is the world remembering itself, the last lullaby of the gods. Long ago, when Hyrule was young and the goddesses had just shaped the world from chaos, they wove music into creation. Every blade of grass, Every ripple of water, every spark of fire held a note of that first divine chord. The sages were not composers, they were listeners, attuned to the echoes of that primal harmony. And when they sang, the world itself would bend to listen. But when silence fell, when the balance was broken and shadows consumed the songs, something strange happened. The melodies did not die. They hid. They sank into the hearts of mortals, into dreams and destinies. That is why, even now, every generation gives birth to musicians who feel something ancient stir in their music. The shepherd's whistle, the child's lullaby, the hero's ocarina. Each is a fragment of that first and final song. There is a legend that when all the lost melodies are remembered, when every sage note is found and sung together once more, the goddesses will hear it and awaken, not to rule, but to bless. Hyrule will shimmer with dawn that never fades, and the music of creation will echo once again through mountains and meadows. The Triforce will glow brighter than gold, not as a weapon, but as a chorus of balance, wisdom, courage, and power in perfect harmony. Yet until that day, the music waits. Perhaps in the hum of the wind across the plains, perhaps in the faint ring of steel when a hero draws his blade, or perhaps, more softly, in the quiet of the heart, where hope still hums its unfinished refrain. The lost songs of the sages are not truly lost. They are hidden in every breath, every heartbeat, every dream. To hear them, one must only stop and listen, not with the ears, but with the soul. For in every silence, there is music waiting to be remembered. And as the last note fades into the night, the world sighs, content, if only for a moment, to remember what it once was, and what it might yet become. In the hush between worlds, where time folds upon itself like a tired scroll, Hyrule dreams the same dream again and again. It begins with light, radiant, pure, born of divine hands, and it ends always in shadow. Between them lies a melody too ancient to forget, a song played endlessly across the ages, the song of balance, of courage, of loss. When the goddesses left their mark upon the newborn earth, they did not leave perfection. They left continuance, a world meant to move, to break, to mend, and to begin again. Thus, the story of Hyrule was not written as a single tale, but as a circle. Each age rises, shimmering with hope, only to sink once more beneath the weight of darkness. Yet, from every ruin a new dawn is born. The people of Hyrule learn to see this not as punishment, but as rhythm. The old texts of the Shaker call it the Great Turning, an eternal dance between the three divine forces. Wisdom seeks order, courage seeks freedom, and power seeks dominion. When they align, the world breathes in peace. When they clash, the world must hold its breath, waiting for the cycle to turn again. In every age, three spirits awaken to play their parts. A hero, young and unyielding, bearing the mark of courage. A princess, luminous and wise, holding the light of wisdom. And a shadowed king, heavy with ambition, bound to the flame of power. They are not merely individuals, but reflections, embodiments of eternal truths, summoned by the will of the Triforce itself. The ancient storytellers said that even if centuries passed and the names were forgotten, the pattern would remember. Somewhere in the heart of the world, a child would always rise with a destiny he never asked for. Somewhere, a princess would dream of a peace that costs her freedom. And somewhere, a dark soul would hunger for dominion, unable to see that his own desire completes the very balance he tries to destroy. The Shaker archives speak of temples buried in dust, where time itself bends, places where the echoes of old lives still murmur. In those hallowed halls, the past and future overlap like ghostly reflections. If one were to listen long enough, one might hear the footsteps of heroes long gone, the prayers of princesses who never ceased believing, and the laughter of children who will one day wield swords of legend. In those whispers, it becomes clear that the cycle is not a curse. It is memory. The world remembers the courage that once saved it, the wisdom that once guided it, the power that once threatened it, and it seeks to recreate the balance, even at the cost of endless repetition. But even within repetition, there is change. For every Link who raises his blade, there is a new question in his heart. For every Zelda who prays for light, there is a deeper understanding of shadow. And even Ganon, in his endless hunger, plays a part he does not fully comprehend, for his striving ensures that light must rise again. The Deku trees have watched this all before. The great fairies have sung this song 1,000 times. The winds have carried the same tune from ocean to mountain and back again. Yet each telling is unique. The melody may be familiar, but the notes always shift. That is the quiet mercy of the goddesses. Even in repetition, the world still learns, and so the wheel turns. The ruins of one Hyrule become the foundations of another. Legends fade into lullabies, lullabies into myths, and myths into whispers. But somewhere, deep in the dreaming soil of the world, a sword still waits in its stone. Somewhere, a child still dreams of adventure. Somewhere, destiny stirs, and the cycle begins again. In the heart of the forest, beneath the eternal hum of wind through the leaves, the air holds a strange kind of remembrance, as though the trees themselves have seen this story unfold before. Their roots twist through the remains of forgotten kingdoms, drinking from the memories buried deep beneath the soil. They whisper of heroes reborn, of empires fallen to dust, and of the same sunlight that warms both the living and the ghosts. Each age calls its hero differently. Sometimes he is a boy of green, pure and untested. Sometimes a wanderer, burdened with forgotten pain. Sometimes he is a silent knight who carries the sorrow of centuries behind his eyes. Yet always he is the same, not by name, nor by flesh, but by the spirit that binds him to the song of the world. The courage that flows through him is older than his own life, older than even the stars above Hyrule Field. Zelda, too, returns, each time beneath a different crown, in a different body, in a kingdom both ancient and new. Her wisdom does not come from memory but from intuition, as though the echo of her past selves hums faintly in her heart. In her calm gaze lies both the gentleness of mercy and the weight of prophecy. She is the dream of order, reborn again and again to remind the world that even amid ruin, light has not forgotten how to shine. And then there is Ganon, or what remains of him. A man, a beast, a storm of hatred that can never rest. He too is caught in the pattern, bound by the same divine geometry that binds the others. His lust for power, his defiance of fate, his endless fall into darkness, all of it repeats because, in the deepest sense, the cycle cannot exist without him. For without shadow, the light cannot know itself. Without the hunger of power, courage would never rise and wisdom would never bloom. There are some among the Shaker who say the goddesses themselves cannot stop the turning. They created the Triforce to be perfect, but perfection cannot grow, only balance can. And balance demands motion. So the wheel turns, and the world dreams again. Once, in the fading twilight of an age long gone, a sage asked a dying hero, "Do you not tire of the struggle, of being called again and again?" And the hero smiled, his breath shallow, his eyes reflecting the dim glow of the setting sun. "If the story must be told," he whispered, "then let me be the one who tells it." It is said that after he fell, his sword sang softly as it cooled in the grass, a faint ringing like a lullaby, or perhaps a farewell. That sound still drifts across time. Sometimes, when a new hero first touches the blade, the same note trembles again, like a voice carried through the centuries. Across timelines and dreams, the faces change, yet their hearts are always the same. The villages rebuilt, the ruins reclaimed, the monsters reborn. Every soul in Hyrule carries an echo of those before them, a fragment of the story that will one day be retold. Even the stars above, patient, eternal, shimmer in the same constellations that once guided the first hero through the wild. The old chroniclers tried to mark where each age began and ended, but their ink always faded. Because truthfully, there is no ending, only a pause between breaths. The legend sleeps, only to wake again in another form, another song. And in that knowing lies the quiet beauty of Hyrule, not that it endures unbroken, but that it remembers. Every tower that falls becomes stone for another. Every dream that fades gives birth to a new dawn. The goddesses do not weep for the world's repetition, for they understand what mortals cannot. That eternity is not a line, but a circle, and within that circle lies the heartbeat of creation itself. When the final light fades from the sky, and the echoes of battle drift into silence, Hyrule sleeps once more. The grass sways gently where armies once clashed, the rivers murmur over stones that remember the sound of steel. From above, the stars look down, patient, ancient witnesses to the story that has been told 1,000 times and will be told 1,000 more. The sword rests again in its pedestal, bathed in the faint glow of moonlight. It has been wielded by countless hands, each guided by the same invisible melody. To some, it was a weapon, to others a promise. But in truth, it is neither. It is a thread, a single shining line connecting every age, every life, every dream. Through it, the goddesses sing their quiet hymn of balance, and the world listens. In the castle that will one day crumble, Zelda writes her final words in a book bound by gold and grief. Her script trembles, not from fear but from understanding. The story never ends, she writes. Because it was never meant to. We are all notes in the same eternal song. She closes the book, places it beside her window, and watches the dawn she has seen so many times before, different sun, same sky. Far away, in a field of wildflowers that once was battlefield, a child plays a tune on a small wooden flute. The notes rise into the cool air, uncertain but pure. It is the same melody the goddess Hylia once taught the winds, a song of beginnings disguised as an ending. The breeze catches it, carries it across mountains, lakes, and ruins, until it finds the sea. There it fades into the sound of waves, as though the world itself hums in contentment. And perhaps that is the true secret of the endless cycle, not despair, but peace. For each retelling gives the world another chance to learn. The mistakes repeat, yes, but so does the hope. The hero's courage is never truly lost, nor the princess's light, nor even the shadow's purpose. Each plays their part so the universe may keep its rhythm, the grand, slow waltz of creation. The Triforce gleams faintly in the dark, its golden triangles forming a perfect unity. Yet if one looks closer, one can see that it is not still. It pulses, faintly, like a heartbeat, each pulse a lifetime, each lifetime a prayer. When the balance falters, the pulse quickens. When harmony returns, it slows. And so it breathes as if alive. For in truth, the Triforce is not a relic, but a reflection of all who have ever sought to live, to fight, to hope. There is a story told by the Kakiri elders, whispered only when the forest is at its quietest, that at the end of all things, when the last echo fades and time itself closes its eyes, the three, wisdom, courage, and power, will stand together, unbound by form. They will see at last what they truly are, not opposites, but parts of the same whole. And when they finally understand, the circle will not break, but open, blooming into eternity. Until that day, the story continues, sleeping, waking, repeating, and remembering. Somewhere, a hero will hear destiny calling through a whisper of wind. Somewhere, a princess will dream beneath the same starlight. Somewhere, a shadow will rise again, not knowing that his fall gives birth to dawn. The wheel turns. The legend breathes. And in the quiet heart of Hyrule, the song of the world begins again. Long after the last battle has been fought, and the last prayer whispered into the wind, Hyrule becomes a dream. Its mountains soften into clouds, its rivers blur into memory, and its castles fade into quiet starlight. What remains is not stone or crown or sword, but the echo of a story that has no beginning and no end. In that dream, the goddess Hylia still watches, though her form has long dissolved into the rhythm of the rain. The hero still walks, though his name changes with every age. The princess still dreams, her heart forever bound to the song of wisdom. And the shadow, once feared, still moves in silence, not as an enemy, but as a mirror to the light. For even darkness, in the balance of the world, is a part of its beauty. The Triforce glows faintly in the sky, its three lights shimmering above the horizon like eternal stars. It is said that when all three shine with equal brightness, time itself holds its breath, and the world becomes still enough to listen. To hear that silence is to understand the heart of the legend, that every life, every sorrow, and every triumph is one note in the divine melody that sustains creation. A gentle wind drifts through the empty fields of Hyrule. It carries whispers of every story that has ever been told, of the goddess's tears, of the boy who drew the sword, of the songs sung by sages who no longer have names. Their voices intertwine, rising into a harmony so pure that even the stars seem to tremble. And if one listens closely, beneath the sound of the wind, there is something softer still, the sound of a harp being tuned somewhere far away. Its strings hum with old magic, ancient and kind. It is the music of beginnings, waiting for another verse, for the story is not finished. It never will be. It lives in every retelling, in every breath of courage, in every choice to seek the light again. So, when you close your eyes tonight and drift into dreams, perhaps you'll find yourself walking those quiet fields once more, hearing the rustle of leaves, the song of the sky, the hum of a sword buried deep in time. And maybe, for a moment, you'll feel the presence of all who came before you, the hero, the princess, the goddess, walking beside you beneath the eternal dawn. Because Hyrule is not a place. It is a promise that light will always return. And as long as there are those who remember, the legend will live on.